Hey, Brian Miller here, and thanks so much for tuning into this week's episode of Thursday Thoughts on the Beyond Networking podcast. This week, we're talking about New Year's resolutions that are worth making and keeping in 2021.
Want to change the world? There's nothing to it.
When Gene Wilder first sang those words in the 1971 film, very few people took notice. Contrary to popular belief, the film was not a commercial success, grossing only $2 million. Critics were split. Roger Ebert raved, probably the best film of its sort since The Wizard of Oz, while Gene Siskel wrote, nothing in The Factory is appealing. Roald Dahl, whose book was the source of this movie adaptation, disowned the film for putting too much emphasis on Wonka and not enough on Charlie, and making major alterations to his original plot. Willy Wonka and the Chocolate Factory didn't truly find an audience until the mid-1980s, when regular television broadcasts brought the strange, uneven, and occasionally scary film into the lives, hearts, and minds of a wide audience. It is now one of the most iconic and enduring films of all time, not in spite of its flaws and eccentricities, but because of them. And at the core of its staying power is, I believe, the fundamental belief expressed in the lyric at the start of this video. Want to change the world? There's nothing to it.
If you want to view paradise, simply look around and view it. Anything you want to do it. Want to change the world? There's nothing to it.
All children believe they can change the world. Why wouldn't they? Anything can be anything in a child's imagination. A toothbrush can be a magic wand. A rock can be an infinity stone. A child can be a princess, an astronaut, a world-famous chef, and a dragon, all in the same afternoon, simply by imagining it's possible. And then we grow up. Or at least that's what we think we're doing. To paraphrase the late, great Ken Robinson, everyone is born creative, but we are educated out of it. A large part of our formal education is focused on understanding just how small we are in the context of the wider world. That's a really important lesson because it teaches humility and encourages understanding, but it's often missing this corollary. Just because something exists in your world doesn't make it any less important or valuable than things that exist in the world. And because we fail to teach that corollary to kids, we tend to grow more cynical as we get older. The world is simply too large to make a real difference. If you rolled your eyes at that iconic line from Willy Wonka, simply look around and do it, this is why. We know it's not simple, and we really can't change the world. Well, maybe everyone can't change the world, but you can certainly change your world. So let's talk about the ripple effect. Your world is probably bigger than you think. It starts with you and the people you immediately come into contact with on a regular basis, right? Your household, your family, your roommates, or neighbors. In and of itself, that's a world worth changing for the better. Making a pot of coffee for your partner or roommate who had a late night before they wake up, even though you don't drink coffee, is a small kindness. But that kindness puts someone else in a better mood. They've got a pep in their step instead of feeling miserable from the late night. So maybe they compliment a stranger on their cool hat. That stranger gets a boost of energy and pays it forward. And suddenly your tiny change in your world becomes a large ripple in the world. So, New Year's resolutions. I rarely make them, as I've talked about in the past. I don't see the calendar flipping from December 31st to January 1st as different than any other day of the year. It's easy to fall into the trap of waiting for next year to make a change. So I try to implement changes worth making whenever they come up, regardless of where I am in the calendar. But this year feels different, doesn't it? After such a tumultuous 2020, it's hard not to wish for a magic transformation in 2021. Of course, we have another long, difficult year ahead. But there is hope, both from a medical science standpoint and a humanities standpoint. We saw a lot of the worst of humanity come bubbling to the surface last year. Dire circumstances sometimes bring people together, but fight or flight can also throw people into everyone for themselves mode. I don't blame the folks who fell into the latter. But if we adopt the new year as a blank slate, in its most naive, ideal form, then we've got a choice to make. This year, 2021, are we going to change the world for the better, or let it continue spiraling out of control? I can't speak for or control anyone but myself. I'm dedicated this year to changing the world. And by the world, of course, I really mean my world. And I'd love for you to join me. Well, that's it for this week's episode of Thursday Thoughts. If you enjoyed this, found it useful, inspiring, or engaging, hit the share button and send it to somebody who is important to you, who's meaningful to you in your world. Because, of course, that change will help change the world as the ripples go off. I'm fully aware that at the time this video is coming out, at the time I'm recording it, it's actually just a day after there was a complete disaster at the Capitol in America. Some of the positive vibes I was going for when I wrote this for my blog a week ago feel maybe a little disingenuous right now, given how difficult and tragic yesterday was. In spite of that, I stand by everything in this episode. The only way to change the world is to change your world, to make your world a little bit better for the people in it, and let them make their world a little bit better for the people in theirs, and let everything spread from there. So I'm still committed to this as a New Year's resolution. I hope you are as well. If you enjoyed this video, hit the like button. Of course, subscribe if you aren't already. Tune in every other Thursday on the YouTube channel for these Thursday Thoughts episodes. Every week on the podcast, as soon as the new season starts. Season 4 of the Beyond Networking podcast will formally be starting in just a couple of weeks, by February for sure. It's a themed season. Season 4 will not be my standard season of the podcast. It will be themed. That announcement is coming very, very shortly. I'm very excited to give you this announcement. But until then, thanks so much for sticking with me. And always remember, our world is a shared experience. Every interaction is meaningful, and every person you meet, even virtually, is important. I'll see you soon.